All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's Portals community call. It's our August 2020 edition. Once again, it is being led by Nicholas Hayduk of Engineered Code. We also have Paul Fuchs on the line. Great to have them both back. If you've been here before, you know that this is a chance to both gather some new information, but also ask your questions of our presenters today. So look for the questions queue or the questions block in the webcast interface. Enter them at any time. I know that Nick and Paul will be making time for those. We're also recording today's event, so you will get access to that after the event. So without any further delay, Nick, I'm going to hand things off to you.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen here. So yeah, welcome everyone. Hope everyone is enjoying, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, the summer. I know that the weather for us has been particularly nice, so it's been nice to be able to kind of get outside and enjoy the nice weather, you know, being 6 feet away from everyone. Today's topic, we're going to talk about Power Apps portal theming, but we'll of course talk about some recent news and some Q&A. So let's kind of dive right in. All right, here. Okay, so a quick introduction. My name is Nicholas Hayduk. I am the president and software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting Inc., based here in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Microsoft MVP, and I began my career with ADX Studio, which is the company that built Power Apps portals and was acquired by Microsoft in 2015. So I've been doing this a long time, and it's kind of what we live and breathe here at Engineered Code is Power Apps portals. If you want to reach out to me, you can certainly do that on LinkedIn. You'll also see the Twitter account that we have, as well as my blog and the YouTube channel. That YouTube channel, we like to have videos out almost every week, and we'll also post the recordings of the community calls there as well. So give that a follow if that's of interest. Of course, we'd like to thank our partners in this endeavor, Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World, for kind of hosting the calls, helping us organize, getting the word out. So always appreciate their help getting these calls put together. So quick agenda, we'll talk about the whatever kind of portals news there is for the last kind of month or so. We'll then kind of dive deep into our topic for today, which, as I mentioned, is Power Apps portals theming. We'll talk about the time of our next portals community call, and then we'll go into, we'll have some opportunity for Q&A. If at any point during the presentation here, if you do have any questions, please, as Jason mentioned, drop them in the questions area. We'll do our best to answer. So feel free to drop those questions in at any point. So let's kind of cover what I've got for some portals news this month. What I wanted to do was just kind of feature some of the upcoming portals virtual conferences that are going to be happening. If you haven't been paying attention, I think there's a virtual conference, at least one a day. That's at least what it seems like these days. But that's great because all these, people get to, benefit from the community. Most of these virtual events are free for everyone to partake in. So, and what's exciting is that upcoming here in the fall is we have two conferences that are going to be specifically dedicated to Power Apps portals. So there's a Power Apps portal Saturday, which will be happening on September 5th. And so that's run by kind of the D365 Saturday group. I believe kind of Victor Jantis and a couple other people are organizing that. So that will be no doubt a great event. If you're looking for something to do on October 15th, I'm helping organize along with Nick Dolman and Jim Novak, Julie Yak, Colin Vermander. There's a number of us who are organizing the what we're calling the Fall Into Power Apps Portals Conference, a single day virtual conference, free to attend. And right now we do have the call for speakers open. So if you do have a topic that you, if you've got some portals knowledge to share, please do put in a session in the call for speakers. We would love to see what the people want to talk about. So please, if you have any interest in speaking, it was only a couple of years ago where I kind of got into doing this. Before that, I didn't really do this at all. So all it takes is kind of one event to get started, and it's a lot of fun. So please consider putting in a session to speak at the Fall into Power Apps Portals conference on October 15th. Otherwise, if speaking isn't your thing and you just want to learn, mark that in your calendar as a day where you can drop in and see a bunch of different sessions on Power Apps Portals. I'm going to do a non-portals related shameless plug, and that's because in the last couple of weeks here, I worked with a fellow MVP, Gus Gonzalez, and what we did is we put together an extension for Google Chrome that's specifically targeting users of model-driven Power Apps. So of course that includes Dynamics 365. What it is it's a Chrome extension that allows you to expand and replace text as you type. So you can think about it kind of as text macros where you type in something and that text kind of automatically gets translated to something else. So a good example would be you type in HB and all of a sudden it turns into happy birthday. So, little short codes like that can, turn into something longer. Now, we based it on an existing Chrome extension. So there was a Chrome extension that already did kind of all the stuff that I just talked about. But what we did is we added some functionality so that if you're on a form in Dynamics or a model-driven Power App, you can basically put in a kind of a special little syntax where it will auto-insert data based on the values of that form. So a good example would be if you just typed in the word last name, say last name all one word, it will then look at the last name field on your model-driven app and actually put in that last name field. So it's really useful for kind of quickly adding text into different places. A good example would be the case number on a case. Who wants to remember all those crazy numbers and digits? So what you can do is you can just have a shortcode that's say CN. If you're on the case form anywhere and you need to put it into a note or something like that, you just type in CN and it will automatically pull the case number from that form. So I've got the link there on for the Chrome Web Store. Gus put together a video. When we post these, I'll post the links for those as well. But would be happy for you to kind of check that out and give us your feedback. We're already getting a number of people with kind of, they want changes, they want new stuff. So we'll definitely be looking at that. But I just thought I'd take someone saying, please put the URL links in the slides in the chat. Well, that's a very good idea. Can I easily do that? I think I can. Just give me 1 second here. That's a good idea. If I go to here, I should be able to go to this. So yes, I will put the links for the events and I will drop those. Yeah, so I don't typically share the slides, just not because there's usually not that much in them. Usually the video is good. And then what I do is I do post any links that I do have in the slides. Generally, I put in the kind of the description of the video. But let me just drop it into the chat here and do this. Let's see if that. Let me just give me 1 second here because that's a very good. I'd love it if we got a whole bunch of session submissions here for our conference while we're on the call here. So let me just do that quickly. Next time I have links, I will be better prepared for this, but this is a good thing to do. I'm assuming you can see those links in the chats now. And let me just throw in the links to the tool. And the link to Gus's fantastic YouTube video that he put together on the tool. All right, there they are. Okay, so yeah, that's my non-portals. I mean, it's not completely non-portals related. Certainly, you could use that when you're in the portal management model-driven app if there's some things you do. But really, what we're targeting more and what kind of got me interested in it is that we do a lot of work with partners. We're typically a lot of times we're dealing directly with partners. So this was an opportunity to do something that was actually going to help the end users of Dynamics, as opposed to, we're writing XRM toolbox tools that, end users aren't using. So it was cool to kind of help out a different audience. So, all right. So that kind of covers what I had for news. There weren't any kind of new major releases. It was just a few days before our call last month where they did announce the general availability, or not the general availability, but the preview of the web API. So I know that Nick Dolman has a great blog post where he kind of goes into the web API a little bit. I know I'm going to be spending a little bit more time next month diving into that. So you can look forward to maybe some videos or some blog posts on the web API. But there wasn't really kind of any other major news that at least that I could remember when I was putting together these slides. So let's move on to today's topic, which is Power Apps Portals theming. So what do we mean when we say Power Apps Portals theming? So that's essentially the look and feel of your portal. So what colors do you want? What fonts do you want? How big are the fonts? What are the corners rounded? Are they sharp corners? That sort of thing. So what we find is that organizations who are putting out a portal, they care way more about how a portal looks to their end customers than they do about any other interfaces that you'd work with on the Power Platform. For internal audiences, yeah, I mean, they want it to be functional, but they don't really care generally if it looks pretty. But that is certainly not true for portals. So there is a kind of a big emphasis on making sure that it's branded so that it kind of looks and feels like maybe other web properties that an organization has. So Power Apps Portals theming is, a large and important component of any Power Apps Portals project. And to be honest, sometimes I don't think it gets the love that it should get. So that's why I wanted to talk about it this month. So at a base level, Power Apps Portals uses Bootstrap version 3.3.6 to as the kind of the base theming framework. Bootstrap is a framework that was originally introduced by Twitter and is essentially a standard for CSS class definitions and certain JavaScript components, certain CSS components, and they give you kind of a bunch of different UI elements that are all created using standard markup and standard styles, which allows you to then create these themes that then can be applied across the whole site. So, the header is constructed in a certain way, the footer is constructed the same way, the navigation, panels, there's all these different components that have a kind of a standard set of markup and CSS, and that means that you can then create these Bootstrap themes, which are essentially just CSS files that will apply apply your theme across the whole site. Now there are now two options for kind of two roads you can go down when we talk about customizing your theme for your portal. So if you don't really want to get too much into the Bootstrap, if you're just kind of wanting to do some basic, instead of blue, I want my buttons to be green or orange, there is a basic theme that was recently introduced as part of the recent release wave. So there's something pretty new, and that is kind of more geared towards the, as they call them, the citizen developers, or kind of the makers who are going in there. They're using Portal Studio. They're not looking to get too, they're not looking to try to customize it too much. They're not looking to do too crazy things, but they do want their buttons to be the right color. They want the backgrounds to be the right color, that sort of thing. So there are some basic options available with the basic theme. And then kind of the next level up is you can actually go in and just upload your own Bootstrap theme and replace the one that Microsoft kind of provides out of the box. So I'll talk a little bit more about those options. So as I mentioned, the basic theme, that's a new feature that was included as part of the 2020 Wave 1 release notes, or sorry, the 2020 Wave 1 release. And that is available in Portal Studio. So if you're not kind of familiar with the terminology, Portal Studio is the new editing experience that you get when you go through make.powerapps.com. there's a number of different editing interfaces in Power Apps portals. So there's the model-driven app that you'll commonly see as the kind of the portal management app. There is the legacy front-side editing experience where you actually go to the portal itself, you sign in, and if you're an administrator, certain edit buttons start lighting up all over the page. So that's what I like to call the legacy front-end editing experience. But there's kind of this new experience that Microsoft has been working on quite hard over the last couple of years, and they've really focused their energies there, and that's what we call Portal Studio. So when you go to make.powerapps.com and you click the edit button and you're kind of taken to that screen where you can kind of see a preview of your portal, you can, it looks very much like, you know, you're kind of building out a Canvas app maybe. That's the Portal Studio. So this basic theme capabilities is built into that Portal Studio. What's great about this is that you really don't need to have any CSS knowledge to be able to do this. From a technical perspective, underneath the hood, what it's really doing is it's leaving your all the CSS files intact that kind of come out of the box, and it's just applying an additional one on top with certain overrides for the colors that you select. So I'm just going to swap over to show you kind of how that looks. So maybe I'll just close this. So what I was talking about in terms of Portal Studio, so I'm in make.powerapps.com. Just going to switch over to the right environment here. So I'll have my list of apps, and you can see here that I have my model-driven Power App here, which is my portal management. But if I want to get into my into Portal Studio, I click this little ellipse button, and then I click Edit, and that's going to take me into this this experience. Hopefully it loads. I don't know if anyone else has been having issues with Portal Studio being a bit of a pain the last couple of weeks. So yeah, so now we're into Portal Studio, and we'll then jump over to, you'll see the little kind of pencil crayon and kind of the paintbrush icon here. And you can see that right now I do not have basic theme enabled, so I can't click over to edit basic theme. We'll talk about what happens if I don't have it enabled here in a minute. But if I do want to enable it, I click this button. Should be able to click this button, yeah, to enable it. And you can see what happens is Microsoft presents me with a number of preset options. So let's say I want dark yellow. I click that, and my whole portal will kind of change the look and feel. And then what you can do is that you say you want to kind of start from one of these themes, but maybe you don't quite like that yellow, or you want to tweak things. You can go back into here, go to, oh, I must have clicked that multiple times. It may take a second. There we go. So I can go into my dark yellow. Go back here, and what I can do is I can say I want a new theme. So now that's going to create a new theme. It'll take a second here, where I can pick my colors. So I can go in here and say, I don't want this, my primary color. Let's just take that down a notch. Let's make that D. So now I got this nice pink color. And you can see here that as I change that, the primary color of the site changes. My header menu color, let's change that to pink too. Do that. It'll just take a second to load up here as it saves. That one may not apply right away. But the idea here is that as we change these things change. There we go. It just takes a second. So now we've got pink here. So again, you don't need to know anything about CSS. There's really, you know, it's pretty simple. The most you really have to do is, you've even got a color picker here, so you don't even really need to know the hex codes and all that sort of stuff. You can say, no, I like that color instead. And you can make it go away, and you can very quickly kind of theme your portal. Now, the kind of limitations here is you'll see that's really about picking colors. So if you want to pick a different font, maybe basic themes aren't for you. If you want to sharp corners versus rounded corners, again, maybe basic theming isn't for you. Basic theming is really about making sure the colors are on brand, and that's really what basic theming is all about. Now, if you always go back here, you don't like what you've done, you can always flip back between one of those or turn the basic theming off even. If I turn the basic theming off, I go back to what my original theming was. I'll just quickly look at the questions here. only an old version of Bootstrap is used. Yes, that is very true. So yeah, Bootstrap version 3.3.6, and you'll see I'll have a slide about this at the end. But yes, it is. Bootstrap version 4 is available. Unfortunately, there's there's a lot of portals out there. It's not very, Bootstrap 4 is not very backwards compatible, so it's not just a case of upgrading everything works. It's a significant enough change that yeah, portals for the foreseeable future, as far as we know, is going to remain with Bootstrap 3. It said, what if I update the Bootstrap directly to change a color, for example? Yeah, and we'll get into that here in a second. All right, so I'm going to flip back to my presentation here. So that was kind of basic theming. Now let's talk about if you need a little bit more than just colors, what are your options? So you can find pre-built Bootstrap themes on the internet. As was pointed out, because version 3 is getting a little dated, it's becoming harder and harder to find kind of modern themes because most people are kind of targeting version 4, but there are still places that exist where you can find the Bootstrap themes. Another option, and this is the one that we tend to use, is there are tools online, such as this Bootstrap Live Customizer, which give you an interface similar to what we were looking at with the basic theming, but with way more options. And so essentially you get, instead of there being 5 or 6 colors you can pick, there's literally hundreds of options in there. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And so essentially what you do is you then take the Bootstrap theme file that it generates, and then you replace the theme file that exists in the portal, and you use that file instead. So within Bootstrap, there are, like I said, many variables, and those are pretty much all customizable through these types of tools. Again, a little bit more advanced, but you can really change the look and feel of your portal using a tool like that. So I do want to jump over and take a look at that. So here's the Bootstrap Live Theme Customer, and you can see that here. So Bootswatch is a very common place to get Bootstrap themes for. I don't know, to be honest, I'm not sure if they are still version 3 or not. They do kind of look like version 3, so you'd have to kind of see if there's any in here that you like. But what we typically do is, and you can see there's some examples here. I usually reset the default when we're starting these. And you can see, yeah, this is an outdated version of Bootstrap. Yep, that's unfortunately for us, there's nothing we can do about that. And so what you can see here is they essentially have examples of all the different components that exist in Bootstrap. So you can make changes and you can see how it will apply. So Bootstrap does things like progress bars, they do the badges, labels, buttons, these alert areas, pagination, breadcrumbs, navigation, tabs, all of these different elements, jumbotrons, list groups, etc. And what you can do is you can then customize, and you can see that there's literally like hundreds of different options of what you can do. And you can go into here and say, my brand primary color. I can say I want this to be, let's just say green. Or even just do something like this. So let's say I pick that one. So you can see now that I've changed my brand primary color, all the elements on the page that use brand primary color are changed. So you can see that kind of ugly green that I just picked kind of appears throughout the website. And again, there are very many variables that you can play around with. Now, in most cases, I don't want to kind of scare you away. In most cases, you don't end up changing a whole bunch of things. What we typically see, you're doing is you're changing the brand primary color. You're changing, some brands want the rounded corners, some want the square corners. That's kind of most of what you're doing. The other big one would be the typography. So if you go into the fonts, you can then start customizing which are the default fonts. So that's another common one we see where an organization has certain fonts. Hopefully you're using something like Google Fonts, which makes it pretty easy, and you can do it that way. I got a question here. Does the Portal Studio apply to legacy portals like the Partner Portal? Yes, thank you, Paul, for answering that. But yes, the answer is yes. The Portal Studio is just another interface for editing the exact same type of data. So any of the Dynamics 365, what used to be Dynamics 365 portals, the Portal Studio should be enabled for those if you go through make.powerapps.com, even ones that were created originally through there. So that's essentially how you can create a custom theme through these Bootstrap tools. And let's just pretend this was a really nice Bootstrap theme. I really like this green. What I can do is I go here and I say, give me the Bootstrap CSS file. And I say, download this file. So now I've got this theme too, because I've done this a few times. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to my portal, and there's a few different options here for how you can actually take this theme file and upload it. So when I'm in the when I don't have basic theme editing, I got this edit CSS option, and you can see here I have this upload custom CSS. So I can click that. I can go to downloads. I can pick theme 2, the one that I just created. I can upload it. We can wait, and I can see how it gets applied to my portal. So what it's done is it's uploaded this file, it's included it as a child file, and all the changes that I wanted are here in my portal. Now, if I then go over here, I guess I got to find a button here because I've changed some stuff around. So if I go back to here, go to home. So what I'm going to do is I've got my theme here, and I'm going to click Browse Website. Now what I need to do is I need to find an example of that color. So what I'm going to do instead, because just to so you can see what kind of change we can make, I'm going to upload another custom CSS, which is another theme that they've created, that Amelia theme, which is a large scale change. It becomes very obvious when you do it. So I'm going to click Save, Browse Website. Of course, it's not working. So I'm just going to kind of show you how this works behind the scenes. So if I go into here, I'm going to go into my portal management, and it's possible that we've ended up with, so just so you know that the basic theming functionality is still preview type functionality. So my guess is we've run into a case where it's on, but it doesn't think it's on. So let me just double check my web files here. Yeah, so portal basic theme, you can see that there's a published web file for this, which there shouldn't be when you turn it off. So I'm going to just try flipping this again, because as soon as I disable basic theme, that web file should disappear and then not apply to my website anymore. Nope, okay, I'll have to tell Microsoft about that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to deactivate this record so that it doesn't kind of override the styles that I want. And then of course, once I've made a change directly in Dynamics, what do we have to do to make sure that it shows up on the site? We have to make sure that we kill the cache. And one way we can do that is by clicking that Browse Website button. So now you can see we've got our portal kind of back to where it was originally. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to show you the other way that we can upload CSS files. So rather than creating a new theme, we can go into the existing theme.css. And again, we're now in the portal management model-driven app. The theme.css is just simply a web file. So what we can do is we can go into the notes for this web file, which is where the actual web file is stored. And I'm just going to attach another file here. So I'm going to attach the Amelia one. And the way that this works is that it will pull the latest CSS file from, or it'll pull the latest file from the notes. So we'll save that, go back to here, click Browse Website, and see if we can get it to work this time. So you can see now it's pulling my Amelia theme on my portal. So what we typically do is we'll do this type of thing. So we will replace the theme.css by adding our own Bootstrap theme. Now, what you're seeing on the portal is, as great as the Bootstrap theming is, you can see that I put up a valid Bootstrap theme, yet my portal doesn't look so good. That often happens when you go from having something that has dark backgrounds to light backgrounds. So unfortunately, just replacing the Bootstrap file is not the only thing you often have to do on one of these implementations. Often you have to then figure out, okay, if I've got things on light backgrounds, but now I have light text, do I have to change some of the classes on those things? So unfortunately, while Bootstrap is the foundation for these things, there's more that you have to do. So I've got a few other slides here that I want to show you, and then a couple other things I'll show you kind of live here. So we talked about the custom Bootstrap theme. So like I mentioned, use a tool like the Bootstrap Live Customizer, and then replace theme.css web file or deactivate and create a new one. So I kind of hinted at this a little bit when I went into the Portal Management Studio, but essentially what is happening is what you want to do is you want to create a web file that has a partial URL that ends in .css. When you have a web file with a partial URL that ends in .css, the portal actually recognizes that and adds the required CSS link tag automatically to the page. So just by adding a .css file, you'll automatically get that link tag in the CSS included on the page. So, and what's also interesting is that CSS link page or tag is also included on all child pages. So typically when you're branding a portal, you will upload or you will include your theme as a child of the home page. But it's not uncommon to see cases where people want kind of two different branded parts of their site. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to simply, say you have section A and section B on your site, upload a CSS file as the child of section A, and that CSS will apply to it and its children, and then upload a different one to section B. And that way you can very easily achieve a kind of a branded, a site where there's two sections of it that are branded differently. So again, the CSS files are added as a link tag automatically when you upload a file that ends in .css, and that link tag is added to all the child pages as well. And what is the applied order in this case? That's a good question. I've never actually kind of dug into what, how the order is. I don't know if there is an actual, I don't know if it like looks at the order of the CSS file, but that's a good question. I was kind of thinking about that the other day as well. Typically we don't get into, typically it's I feel like it's probably the order that those files were created, because it always seems to, you start one place and then you add files after that. I've never run into a case where I couldn't get the ordering that I wanted, but that's actually something I'm going to look into and figure out how is the ordering. And what I'll do is I'll do a Power Apps portal tip on how the ordering works, because I should be able to kind of dig into the open source code and see how they would order those, whether it's based on the actual order of the web files or whether it's based on the date, or often there will be no kind of prescribed ordering. It will just kind of bring them in, and then often that is based on what date the records went in if there's no specific ordering. So that's a great question. So like I said, Bootstrap isn't generally enough. There are certain parts of the site that don't necessarily use all the Bootstrap classes. Specifically, you're looking at things like knowledge base or ideas or discussion forums. So when you apply a new Bootstrap theme to a portal, it's important that you do go to every single page that you're working on and and see how that Bootstrap theme has been applied to that page. It probably gets you 80% of the way there, but you need to kind of, there is work to do to kind of get you the last 20% of the way there. And that's, as I kind of put out here, that's especially true if you're going from a site that has light backgrounds, which is kind of what the portal assumes out of the box, to a site that has darker backgrounds. What we then typically do is we will have the theme.css, and then we will include another CSS file, And this is where, again, when we get into the ordering, we always kind of add that theme file or our custom theme file after that, and it's always kind of been applied after. That can then add additional styles to the, it adds additional styles to override some of the out-of-the-box things. Because, and I'll show you this when we go back to the screen. The theme.css that Microsoft provides isn't just a pure Bootstrap theme. There are additional classes in there. We often see that when we're running the partner portal, that they do have some extra custom classes in there to apply some styles. So obviously, if you kind of remove those, some of that becomes your responsibility again. So, it's just unfortunately not quite as simple as the Bootstrap file. There's usually a little bit more work to do. So question here, so it says, yeah, for files, it's always last uploaded, probably same logic. Yeah, exactly. So when you're uploading, if a web file has multiple notes attached to it, it's the last one. Again, my guess is that what it might be, but there's also, I think there's an order field, so I'll double check on that. It says, if you have different CSS files and feel the class is not getting your changes, just add important to force you get your change. Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you, Oliver. The important CSS directive is, I guess it would be a lame pun to say it's important, but you can use that to make sure that the classes that you're applying get over have precedence over things that are maybe, if you're having trouble with the ordering, you can use important, or if you're having trouble figuring out what if your classes aren't specific enough, you can do that too. But again, what we generally have is we will add our own file to the theme.css, and then we'll add another CSS file that just includes the extra things, so that we kind of keep our theme.css clean as just a pure Bootstrap theme. And then the other custom CSS goes into another file. All right, a couple of theming tips here. So the portal code editor in XRM Toolbox is also a great resource for editing CSS files, and I'll show you that here in a second. The other thing is use really the way, if you've applied a new theme and something doesn't look quite right, by far the best way to kind of troubleshoot that and figure out what classes you need to override, the best way to do that is to use your browser development tools. Generally, that's by hitting F12 in whatever your favorite browser is. And then you can start inspecting the elements. You can see what's causing that button to be blue when you want it to be green. Is your class not specific enough? You can kind of dig into that. And you can also see which classes are forcing it to be blue, and then you can know what to override. So essentially, the theming is the process of creating your Bootstrap theme, then reviewing the rest of your site, making sure that there are no gaps. And when you do find those gaps, using your developer tools to inspect those elements, identify what classes you need to add a little bit more custom CSS to. So in terms, and then finally here, other aspects of theming. So obviously update the logo. I don't know if anyone here actually works for Contoso. I know I don't work for Contoso, so obviously we have to update the logo. And then the other thing that's, we see often done is just doing a custom implementation of the header and footer web templates. The header and footer web templates are really, those are really what kind of give your portal its look and feel. So often we'll see if there are other web properties in the organization that you're trying to mirror, maybe moving some things around, especially kind of in the footer, changing it so that kind of looks like some of the other sites on that the organization has. So custom implementation of the header and footer web templates is something that's commonly involved in the branding of your portal. So I'll just bring up the XRM toolbox. If you don't know the XRM toolbox, you need to jump off this call and look at the XRM toolbox right now, because it will change your life when it comes to dynamics and CDS and Power Apps development. So there is a tool called Portal Code Editor. I've had it connected to my instance here, and I can load items. This is great for updating, say, my web template. So if I did want to do a custom implementation of my header, I can go into my header web template, and rather than kind of jumping around in the model-driven app, which let's be honest, sometimes can be a bit slow, especially if you're where it really saves you time is if you want to change some JavaScript on an entity list. I don't have any in this particular case, but you can easily update the JavaScript that you have an entity list right here, and you don't have to wait for all those drop downs and stuff to load. So it's really great. And then you can just save this back to Dynamics or to CDS, and then of course make sure that you are clearing the cache when you do that. It also works well for web files. So if I look at the Amelia CSS that I have, now of course the Portal Studio does give us the ability to edit these as well. You can see we ended up with quite a few Portal basic themes. So I'm going to kind of blame Microsoft for the maybe some still issues with the basic theme editing. But you can see here that if I do want to change files, especially if I put up a custom file, that's really the easiest way to kind of edit your CSS, because otherwise they're uploaded as web resource or as files to Dynamics. So no one wants to be like editing a file locally and then having to upload it as a note. Like that's a pain. So I find the easiest way to be editing that custom CSS is just by opening that web file resource in the Portal code editor, and you can easily go in there, change whatever you need to do, save it back to CDS, refresh the cache, and then it's right there. And there are a number of other great tools for portals in the XRM toolbox, as well as, there's hundreds of tools in there. If you don't know about XRM toolbox, definitely something worth looking into. Go back to here. So you can see here, if I go back to my web files, you can see I got a new thing in here. So new theme, I don't know where that came from, to be honest with you. There's a little bit of cleanup. If I go to the inactive, do I have a few portal? Yeah, so I have a few portal basic themes in here. You can see each time I was kind of playing around with them. So all of that gets created in the back end there. Let's see, any other questions? No? Okay, so I'll just jump to my last slide here. All right, so before you ask, yes, Bootstrap version 3 is old. No, I don't know if there's any immediate plans to upgrade it or change to another framework. Just understand that that is a very complex job. It's not backwards compatibility, or Bootstrap 4 isn't really backwards compatible, and Microsoft would probably want it to be, backwards compatible in some way, so they'd have to devise some sort of scheme where people could maybe choose to use version 4 or use version 3, but then the markup is different, so it is a very complex challenge. I don't have any great update on that other than I wouldn't be holding my breath. If you're gonna, if you're doing portals, I would get used to version 3 because I think it's going to be here for a while still. So. All right, so that kind of covers the question here. Our portal is extremely slow. We did not change the theme at all, just changed the logo and the text. So if your partner portal is slow, I mean, usually the theme wouldn't cause any slowness issues. I'd be kind of curious as to know what licensing model are you on? Are you on the old licensing model where you're paying per instance, or are you on the new licensing model where you're buying logins? If you're buying logins, essentially the number of logins that you buy kind of determine how big of a Azure instance, because in the end, these are just Azure web app instances that are running in the cloud. And so if you are, only assigning it, the minimum 100 logins, you're going to get a pretty small portal. Portal's performance is a whole other kind of, it's a long topic, and it's very, it's often very specific to the situation. I do have a blog post kind of where I talk about some common portals performance issues. Often we're seeing that portals performance issues are related to whether it's, if you have a lot of plugins, you got to keep in mind that portals is just built on top of, think of it as an extra layer on top of a model-driven app. So if your model-driven app is slow, your portal is going to be even slower. And the other thing to take a look at is your entity permissions model. If you have a very complex entity permissions model, that can really slow down the queries. So we'll see that often on partner portals where people have, entity permission models of 7 or 8 layers, and the portal's just having a hard time keeping up. All right, I see there's another question here. I'm just going to quickly jump to the next call. So the next call we'll be doing here will be September 24th at the same time, which will be 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight, 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight, which I believe is 7 p.m. UTC. unless the time changes, at which point I don't know what time it will be at, but I don't think the time changes until, my guess is like at least October or November, so shouldn't have to worry about time changes quite yet. So that's when we'll be doing that one. If there are any topics you'd like to see covered on our calls, please do let me know. You can tweet at me or LinkedIn me or whatever if there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover. I'm always open to doing, this call is for the community, so I'd love to cover topics that that people are looking to hear about. So, and then finally, before I kind of get to the last questions here, again, thank you to Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World for helping us out here. And yeah, let's throw your questions, any questions you have, into the chat. And I see there's one here. So what do you recommend for changing the text and managing languages? We have to change them manually by opening page by page, or can we export all at once and re-import? Okay, so multilingual portals, to be honest, is not an area that we've delved too much into. And I can't say that that saddens me because I know that they are relatively complex. When the approach that I generally take would be an import-export thing. Essentially what it's doing is you're trying to create the records for whether it's web pages or content snippets. You're essentially trying to create all those child records. So I generally am doing an import-export because doing it page by page is pretty slow. But unfortunately, I don't have much more practical advice on those because it's not something we've done a ton of. All right, is there anyone else out there that has any questions? I'm not seeing any. I think I've addressed all the questions as far as I can tell. Yep. All right, well, if no one else has any questions, I'm sure everyone is very busy and has other things to do. So I think we'll just, a new XRM plugin would be great. Yeah, an XRM plugin would be good. An XRM Toolbox plugin would be great for that. And now that I think about it, that is ringing a bell. Oliver, was that something that you were working on? I remember you working on something, but I forget what it exactly was. So maybe Oliver Rodriguez, who was the presenter last month, does a lot of great work on portals, very active on the forums. Yeah, maybe that's something we could work with Oliver to do too. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for attending today. Yes, okay, so yeah, Oliver is working on that, but it's in the early stages, but yes, that's why it did kind of ring a bell. So yes, Oliver, yes, keep going on that because it definitely seems like there's interest in getting that working. So, okay, well, again, thank you everyone for your interest in portals. Hope to see you kind of next month. And in the meantime, I hope everyone stays safe and have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, rest of your month, and we'll talk with you in September.
All right, excellent. And with that, we will conclude today's event. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Paul, for your help today, and obviously for everyone in the audience for your attention. Have a good day.